Welcome to Fresh Off the Set. I'm Kari Diaz.
And I'm David Osmond.
Okay, I'm really excited for today's podcast because we both know this incredible woman, Nikki Walker. You've known her for a while, right?
Quite a while, yeah. She is a powerhouse. And I mean, she walks into a room, she lights it up, certainly, and has worked in the corporate world for a lot of places, now at DOMO for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer. But she has so many more gifts to her name and what she really focuses on. She lifts other people, and it's really been great to get to know her in the corporate world, but also as a person. She's a bright light.
She's a good human being. You know, she's doing so much good work here in the state especially, but when you meet her, you feel her energy. You feel how much she really cares about each individual she's talking to. She is so present with you. And you guys were both on covers of a magazine, right?
Nugent Good News, yeah. And had a chance to really spend some good time in different atmospheres and in the corporate, but also that personal realm where we get to know each other and families and where we come from. And it's those stories that really bind us. And what's cool about Utah is there's more diversity here than we realize.
Yep.
And to focus on that and support each other and lift each other, she's doing such a great job.
She absolutely is, yeah. And she's the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at DOMO, like you mentioned. And we've had her on the show multiple times. And she's just, not only, like I said, is she out there doing the work, but we love her because she's a good human being.
Yeah, celebrate that. So enjoy this podcast, guys. It's really great.
Let's give it a listen. I am so excited for our interview for today for Fresh Off the Set. Nikki Walker, how are you?
I'm so good. So happy to be here.
Oh my goodness. We're so happy to have you. Okay, so Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at DOMO.
Right.
You're doing amazing.
Thank you.
You really are.
There's a lot of work to be done out in the world, so we're just in our little corner trying to make things happen.
Well, we've had you on the show several times, so if you're listening, you've probably seen her on Fresh Living. Let's start with, what's your current job? Tell us exactly what you're doing and what it's all about.
So right now I'm Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I also serve in the community as a diversity expert. So my job is to make sure that there are spaces where people feel like they are welcome. And that could look like creating ERGs, employee resource groups. That could look like doing surveys to figure out baselines in organizations. And it could also look like speaking to other organizations about best practices and about how they can implement ways to make people feel like they're in an inclusive environment.
Okay, and if people aren't familiar with the term inclusion, inclusive, can you kind of just define that for us?
Of course. So let me do all three letters, right?
Perfect.
So diversity is having different people from different places, different races, different ages, different developmental abilities, all in one space so that we have different perspectives, right? Equity is a little different than equality. Equity says everybody gets the same thing. But equity says that everybody gets what they need in order to be successful. And then inclusion is the big win at the end. Because when you have diversity in the room and those people have equitable starts, then they feel included. So you have people at the table who all look different, who all think differently, but they have something to offer, and they are in a safe space where they can offer their opinions and their genius, and we can see it all come through.
Sure. Okay, thank you for breaking that down. Okay, how did you come to this point in your career?
I like to say I've always been a DEI advocate, and I've always been just because of my circumstance. I've, as a Black woman, first and foremost, those are the things that you can see. But other things that you can't see is that I came from a single-parent home. I was the middle of three daughters, and my oldest sister had a genetic disorder, so we were in the disability space. I was in organizations where I was the only woman. So I've always been in male-led spaces. I've always had hurdles to overcome that all really fall into DE&I. And I, 4 years ago, was a community manager. And that goes so hand in hand with this space where inclusion matters, because we get to look at the community and say, what does the community need that we can offer? And that community could be inside of the organization or outside of the organization. But this idea of fostering inclusion has always been on my plate. And I've been successful now for the past, 4 or 5 years since
Yes,
I've been
you
in
have.
Utah. So I'm assuming it's my path.
Well, it is definitely your path, and you're doing an amazing job at it. Now, what do you love most about your job? What would you say? And I'm sure there's a few things, but what would you say is top of your list that you love?
Top of my list is hearing back from people after something has happened. So, for instance, a couple of months ago, or maybe a year ago, there was a really hard situation that we went through in Silicon Slopes, and there was some anti-Semitic sentiments going around. And so one of the things that I did was reach out to a rabbi and have him come and talk with the entire company about what anti-Semitism looks like and how you can make sure that you are being an ally to Jewish people. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea who was Jewish and who was not at my company, but I got emails from members of my organization who said, I feel seen, and it feels like the company cares. That's my favorite part. It's my favorite part to go out in the community and give a speech and hear somebody say, that thing resonated with me. I'm now thinking about my friends differently, my circles differently, my organization differently. Those are my two favorite things about what I do.
Yeah, that you're reaching people on a different level and you're making a difference in their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's purpose work.
Sure, it's purpose work. That gives us that motivation, right, to keep going. There's
That's
purpose.
right.
There's purpose underneath it all. How have you seen diversity, inclusion, and equity change in the workplace over the last few years?
Well, I mean, I think we all see where the change happened, and that was in 2020. In 2020, everybody was going along on their regular days, and then the pandemic hit, and it's the great leveler. It was the great leveler, right? Everyone had to sit in their homes. Everyone had to take in the same information. We were experiencing a version of equity at that moment is what was happening. And because of the murder of George Floyd, many, many organizations picked up the banner and said, we are anti-racist, we are inclusive, and we want to show not only our employees that we believe in this, but the world that we believe in this. So in 2020, there was a big uptick in diversity, equity, and inclusion in organizations. Unfortunately, on the grand scheme, what studies are showing now is that many of those pledges were performative, and that organizations are not seeing any real change. Now, I'm fortunate to be in an organization and a part of other organizations where we can say that that's not the case, where women are still moving forward and people of color are finding their place. It's important here in Utah specifically. And there are a myriad of places here where the change has been felt, So what's different is that I think right now, organizations that are serious about DEI are now making sure that it's part of their business strategy. And that's the biggest change that has to happen in order for equity to really permeate the business community. People have to make diversity, equity, and inclusion part of their strategy. And lots of people are, and that's good to see.
That is good to see. That definitely is good to see. What are specifically diversity and inclusion? Why is it so important in the workplace, and what does that look like?
Yeah. DEI in the workplace is important because, I say it like this all the time. And so if you've ever heard me speak, you've probably heard this. But the reason diversity is important is because if there are 5 people who look the same and they're all making a widget and they're all from the same background and they all have the same upbringing, the widget is only going to work for them. There are going to be problems in that widget that people with differing abilities need to address, that women see holes in, that people of color are not experiencing in the same way. So diversity of thought is necessary for a successful company. There are studies upon studies upon studies that say a diverse organization is more profitable than one that is homogenous. And that is because we can relate to our customers. The customer base is always going to be diverse. And if you want to reach all of your customers, you've got to get into all of their heads. And we do that by creating a diverse workplace.
Now, how can we, as best overcome our own biases and preconceived notions in the workplace? What's your opinion on that, Nikki?
Education. My opinion on that is that folks have got to recognize their own biases, and there are ways to do that. There are Harvard surveys that you can take online for free that help you to identify where your biases are. And I think all managers really should embrace that module and really get involved in that kind of work so that they understand how they are relating to all of their diverse employees. Culture for companies starts at the management level. Mm-hmm. It's where the people are. And so when managers are leading with inclusivity, and they're doing that because they understand their biases and they understand how to course correct, then we have a happier workplace, a more equitable workplace. So I think people need to stop and realize where biases are. We all have them. I have them, you have them. You can't get away from them, but you can control them. And there are, I would start with finding out what my biases are, and then look for podcasts, look for books, look for articles that address that specific thing and work on it. Yeah. We are all a work in progress.
Yeah, I like that. Education. That's so good too. Setting that example with management too, and having it in the workplace, because it just trickles down from there, right?
That's right.
It's a big undertaking, but how does one change the culture of a company? I know we could probably do hours on this, but take as much time as you need.
How do you change a culture at a company? Well, first you figure out what you want the culture to be, and I think that a lot of startups have an identity crisis because they've gone into it not knowing who they are or what they believe in. Mm-hmm. So really starting foundationally, understanding what the company culture is going to be, right? Because you have to know what you want in order to plot a path to get to it.
You don't know where you're going if you don't know what the
goal is. So this is one of those situations where you've got to work backwards. Figure out what it is. What kind of environment do you want for your employees? What kinds of feedback do you hope to garner from your employees? What do you want them to say about your company? You figure those things out and then decide what your mission and vision are and work from that. I tell you, we did an exercise in my organization that was led by the chief people officer, and it was brilliant. Really, this exercise about looking at our values as a company and then seeing how those values roll into our everyday behaviors, how we interact with the customer, how we interact with one another, our supervisors, the people who report to us. So it was really intense. And it was really necessary, and I think that anybody could benefit from looking at your values and then expanding that. How do you drill down into them and showcase them in everything that you do? That is how you create culture.
I love that, Nikki. Thank you. How can we help our coworkers feel like they belong? So incredibly important.
It's a one-on-one conversation. It's a one-by-one conversation. Right, I advised someone the other day. I said, you're going to be upset because you're going to say, you want me to do another thing? But yes, I advised the manager to work once a week with their team and ask 2 questions. I am feeling like I am struggling with. What are you feeling like today, this week? And what are you struggling with this week? And similarly with our coworkers, we can be curious and we can be interpersonal with them, and we can ask them, how is this office treating you this week? How are you feeling this month? this doesn't have to be a daily check-in, but so that your coworkers know that you care, that is goal number one, to make them know that you care, and you do that by engaging with them.
Game changer. Right there. Let's get that in every workplace, right? Do you think Utah is a diverse place, and how do you believe we can make changes in our community, even if we don't have as much diversity as other cities and states?
Yeah, I'm going to start there. Are we a diverse community? There is diversity in the Utah community, full stop. That is a fact. There is culture in the Utah community. There are, the Black community exists and is vibrant. The Polynesian community, the Asian community, the LGBTQ community, the immigrant community. There are so many diverse communities here. You just have to look for them. Mm-hmm. So when people say, Utah is not diverse, I fully push back on that, because it's not true. And it's becoming more diverse every single year. So if you're a Utahn and you're not used to this diversity, get used to it, because we're coming. And, it is really about learning who your neighbor is and opening up your heart to new experiences and new ideas and new opinions. That's how to be neighborly in this new wave of Utahns that are going to be joining us over the next 5 years.
Yeah. Kindness, right? Let's just
Kindness.
be kind. Let's be kind.
Please.
Let's let everyone feel like they're heard. That's so important. Okay, and you've won several awards and are a very accomplished person, Nikki. What's a highlight from your career?
Man, so many highlights, but in recent history, I have got to say winning the Women Tech Council Change Catalyst Award was game changer. It, it put me in a space with women that I had never known. I always say I had gone to the Women Tech Council Awards for years, and I'd be so inspired by the women in the room, especially the winners. And that day, when I was one of the winners, and women came up to me to tell me how inspired they were by me, I'll never forget it, because I remember being in their shoes.
I have chills. Nikki, you deserve it, though.
Thank you.
You're doing amazing work here in our state, and you're just a genuinely great human being. We've loved having you on the show, and thank you for doing this podcast today with us. We really appreciate you. If we want to follow you, or maybe have direction from you how to get diversity, equity, and inclusion in our own workforces, where can we go?
You can. I'm super active on Instagram. And my Instagram handle is Nikki Walker PR. And then on LinkedIn, our business community is there, and I'm super active there. You just search Nikki Walker, Utah, and I pop up.
And there she is. And there she is. Okay, thank you so much for doing this today. We'd like to wrap this up with what we call the Fresh Five. I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions to get to know Nikki a little bit better. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. First one. Would you rather watch a movie or read a book?
Watch a movie.
She knew right away. Right away. I'm a movie fan, too. You're headed out on vacation. Where are you going?
Belize.
Ooh, that sounds so good right now.
Yes,
Get out of this weather.
South America, here I go.
Yes. If you could have any superpower, Nikki, what would it be?
Oh, see, I'm going to cheat, because Dr. Tamara Stevenson said a superpower that I want. It was invisibility. But for me, I think it would be mind reading.
Okay.
Yeah, mind reading.
She's going to start mind reading. Watch out. Watch out. Okay. Number 4, your favorite food. What do you love to eat? What do you crave? What would you go have lunch? What would you eat?
Lasagna.
Lasagna.
Yes.
Love it. And your favorite holiday?
Christmas. It's my favorite. I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, so I wasn't allowed to celebrate Christmas. So when I became an adult, it became the biggest holiday ever, every single year.
Now you're celebrating
Now I have
Christmas.
like 3 trees, Christmas.
You're so wonderful. Nikki, thank you so much. It's been so fun to get to know you. And come on the show, podcast. I'm sure we'll see more of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate you. And thank you for listening to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. Please rate, review, and subscribe. And we will see you next week. Congrats, you made it to the end. If you want to continue to freshen up your day, you can watch us on Fresh Living every weekday on CBS Channel 2 in Utah at 1 o'clock. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel, KUTV Fresh Living, and follow us on social media. We will see you next week.